Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first session for our three-track on day 2 of Culture Summit Virtual Modern Leadership. My name is Lisa Paredes. You may have seen me in the opening session. I'm Culture Summit's co-producer, and I'm really happy to be introducing this session today when we're going to be talking about humanity at work and new HR era. Something that I really love about Culture Summit's community is how global, but also how global it is, but also how we have people from different industries, different functions. So I would love for you to share in the chat which field are you working on right now so we can see who is here, who is tuning in from different fields, different industries. I love hearing you share in chat. This is something very valuable in our community. We love sharing experiences and tips during these sessions. It has been such an engaging summit so far. So please drop your name and industry or field that you're working in the chat. And I would love to remind you that 10 minutes at the end of the session, we're going to be answering questions from you. So feel free to drop your questions as they come in the Q&A tab right next to the chat tab so we can get to them at the end of the session. And I would love to introduce the moderator of this session today, my dear friend, co-founder and chief revenue officer of Atlas Go, Magali Mathieu. Welcome, Magali. So nice to have you here today.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here. So excited for this conference for day 2. It's amazing to see everybody here. Alrighty, so we are going to bring in the rest of the panelists as they turn their cameras on and join this virtual room. As they do that, I'll reintroduce myself. So I'm Magali. I'm the co-founder of Atlas Go and chief revenue officer. Atlas Go is a virtual well-being events platform. We do this for companies globally, and I'm super excited to hear about each of our panelists today, and specifically of this amazing topic of bringing humanity back to work. We learned a lot about it during the pandemic. We had some real tests to learn what it means to be humans at work. So I'm super excited to have a brief introduction first, and we'll really dive into the topic. So Duncan, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Duncan Pratt-Stephen. I'm the director of CS North America here at Hibob. Hibob is an HR tool that's helping global teams kind of help automate their HR process and also nurture their talent internally. So working with HR leaders as well as myself as a leader on different tactics on how to bring humanity to HR.
Great, and I'm Laura Dominguez. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening to you all. I head up the People and Communities team at Cisco Meraki. Cisco Meraki is a technology company that builds networking products for our customers. I have the luxury to work with our leadership team to work on all people matters. And in case you're wondering what does People and Communities do, we are all human resources. So love the psychology and behavioral aspects and getting to work with the leadership team to make sure we create an environment where all are included and can thrive.
Thank you. I'm Afif. I'm responsible for the talent and culture of our Maldives properties. So I'm actually joined from quite far. Obviously, virtually we are connected, throughout the world. And my role is really focused on developing our team and looking after the team. And the topic that we're going to talk today, humanity at work, is one of our responsibility. And we operate properties mostly in the Indian Ocean, hotels and resorts. So we'll be bringing some perspectives and ideas that can help everyone to really connect with the topic today, which is humanity at work.
Thank you. Thanks all for being here. I'm so excited because you're coming from different industries, from really different angles to look at this topic. So let's dive in. In terms of humanity at work, I think there's a lot of maybe different ways to look at that topic and define it. So I'd love for us each to kind of go over what our definition is of humanity at work. And Laura, do you want to start us off?
Sure, happy to. So I'll start by saying that COVID impacted all of us in very different ways. At Cisco Meraki, we were in in-office culture before the pandemic, and we had to take a step back and look at what's important to us. It taught us that we can work differently. The last 18 months, it provided us with the need to actually have to balance the home life and the work life, and making sure that our workforce had that balance and need. And we realized the future is here. It's hybrid. So our leaders had to, some were empathetic, some had to learn to be empathetic and understand what the multiple roles families have and our employees have, caregivers, homeschooling now, just everything overlapping, and having to work with them with flexibility. So for me, looking at all that, it's that humanity where the employee feels valued and included in our organization, and making sure that they connect and make that connection.
I love that. Thank you so much. And then moving on to a different experience during COVID, Afif, obviously with your industry, you had a very different reality of not being able to completely go remote. How was that for you, and how specifically do you define humanity at work?
Yeah, it's very good point that you mentioned there. And I think within the hospitality industry, not just here in the Maldives, but also across the world, this is one industry when moving forward, probably majority of the work that we do will still have to be in the place physically to get the job done. Obviously, there are certain remote works that we could do. So it was challenging for us, and something that definitely we didn't have a manual, or even there weren't even case studies that we could look back and practice. So we realized that within the hospitality industry, there was lots of areas where we could look at it, intentionally practicing this element of humanity at work. And we as a hotel company, what we did was we studied this topic very thoroughly, and we brought it carefully to all our stakeholders. And for us, humanity at work is all about how well we as an organization practice the element of compassion and care. I think we all know about this, we all understand this very well, but practically to do it, it's a totally different experience. And we have to close all our properties. We have to send all employees back to home in different countries. For example, here in the Maldives, you have to close both our properties. You have to send them to over 32 different countries, which is where they are from. So having them reach home, check in on them. And also we have to close the property for 8 to 10 months. So we have to check on them once in a while. And how will we do that? All this is a part of humanity at work, because they know that we care for them. Because imagine if the head of HR or a senior person calls them and say, hey, I know you're at home. I understand that the numbers are going up a bit in your city or in your town. Just want to check on you and see if your family is okay. So over the years, I've developed a sort of my own definition. And really, I realized that the people who understand their purpose at work are the people who practice humanity at work, because they know what it means to them, and it doesn't matter which job they have. So that's my first take on this question. Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. We've talked about embodying values, compassion, care, a lot of great stuff. And also in the chat, feel free to tell us what your definition is, what it means to you. We'd love to bring you into the conversation. Duncan, what about you? What does it mean? What does humanity at work mean to you?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I work with HR professionals every day that have a ton of different challenges on how to make sure that they can do things safely now with COVID, understand what the world of hybrid is, making sure that if you're in office, you're safe, understanding that everybody's at a different stage of handling COVID. And that's a really important piece. So I think that what we see a lot with our clients is that we want them to have a safe, responsible way and be creative and understand that there's a human on the other side of the policy that you're about to make. For my own team, I think that now more than ever, community is so important. feeling connected to your team, making sure that people aren't just seen as numbers or targets or quotas, but somebody that's actually working to skill up, learn more about what they're doing every single day, making sure that they're having an impact, not just on the numbers, but on themselves, and they're getting that reward from work. And that's super important. It's a lot of attention that you have to give to that now more than ever, because we can't rely on an in-office experience to give the vibe and the feeling that was used so often in the pre-COVID world to help build that community. It takes a lot of effort from our leaders internally to kind of encourage that. So I think it's remembering a lot of these aspects and not relying on some of our old tactics.
Yeah, I love that. I think just simply remembering that there is a human behind the Slack or whatever intranet or whatever email. It can get so easy to get caught up in the work that we're doing and forgetting about, that somebody's maybe having a tough day behind whatever screen they're on. So I think it's so important. I love the different definitions that you've shared. I think one thing that is always really helpful for people dialing in and joining from the audience is to understand what has maybe worked. What are some of the things that you as a company have embodied in the last 18 how many months now of COVID? I can't keep up. The last over a year for sure. What are some of the examples that you have embodied as an organization? What are some tools and things that really these people in the audience can take away? Afif, do you want to start us off for this one?
Yes, obviously with like I mentioned within our industry, but also within the human resource component, there's a lot of things that we can do, and I would like to share probably two. One of them is the importance of having conversations with employees on a regular basis, and the conversation really refers to, for example, a couple of hours ago before I actually joined this meeting to the forum, I even had a conversation with my HR manager. I was telling him that we have one team member who's getting sick often, and I know physically how he looks like, and I know his practice because I've seen him not really looking after himself. And when he was recently sick for a couple of pretty longer than usually, and there's really no issues that we noticed, but just that he doesn't have any energy to work. So I told him that we need to sit down with him and talk to him and really tell him that we care for him, and that's why we're talking. And he needs to get good quality sleep. He needs to get away from these fizzy drinks because we have observed these practices, and as a heavy smoker. And I told him that's really our job as a HR person. So if we speak to him and really make him understand, because a lot of the, and I even told to my HR manager that his parents may even not tell this to him to stop smoking or to stop the fizzy drinks because they love him. That's their son. But we are the guardians and they walk here and we have the same love, but we love in a different way because we love about their future, their career. So why don't we have a deep conversations with him? And I told my colleague that I'm sure if we tell him, he will change because we are coming from a different perspective. So that is, and that kind of conversations we've had with several employees in the past 8 months, even they weren't present in the property regarding many circumstances. And the other important thing is helping employees to find purpose at work. A lot of the time, employees challenges practicing humanity because humanity at work refers to the care you have for yourself, others, which is obviously your customers and everybody else. And then we are looking around the community and also the environment that we work. But if we help people to find their purpose at work, whether it's a cleaner or whether it's a gardener or whether it's an administrative employee or whether it's an IT expert, and purpose at work is not the job that you do, it's something bigger than that. And I think we probably in my other conversation, I can bring that up a little bit, but that is an area where we could focus within HR. And we have been doing that last really couple of months to help employees to understand how do you find your purpose at work.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And then Laura, earlier when you were talking about your definition, you mentioned how already you've embodied some of these things, right? Whereas prior, you were not at all a culture of working remotely. And then that's really something that you've already embodied. Can you tell us more about that and any other examples that you've been able to see and champion?
Sure, absolutely. So we have the benefit of working with Cisco, where they power the inclusive for all. That is what the goal is for our organization. That is what our purpose is. And the majority of our employees, we had 52% of our employees globally at Cisco already working remotely, managers in a different city than their employees. So we were able to flip the switch very quickly because we had a culture at Cisco who embodied that already. And with Meraki, with our technology, with WebEx, again, able to flip that quickly. I think what was key though for our Cisco Meraki team is really shifting to the employee first mindset. And this is something that Cisco's also helping us with. And it's connecting with the employee. We've noticed human connection is key and everybody's at a different place. So how can we embrace this hybrid world, working with each employee, allowing them flexibility if that's what's needed, embracing, now people are coming back into the office. Some want to get vaccinated, some don't. How do we embrace that, as part of like their beliefs and bringing their whole selves to work? So really for us, it's helping our leaders care deeply, understand each situation is very, very different for them, and how do they make it work?
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, you touched on some big topics, right? Some sensitive topics today. And that's amazing that you're able to really look at that and honor the fact that every person is different, that every person has a different decision, and that's okay. And that you're, really bringing them up, right? As opposed to kind of where you might feel like you're being put down when you're not having the same necessarily desire to make the decision that everybody else is. So that's pretty amazing. How about you, Duncan?
Yeah, so I'm a little biased, just a tad. We use Bob internally, and the clients that we work with obviously use it. Something that we promote heavily is something called superpowers and hobbies. So it's things that during our onboarding process that we want to learn a little bit more about our new hires and our team. I find this is an awesome way to kind of get a piece of the individual outside of work. You have to build that trust. You have to build that connectivity with your employees before we ever talk about targets, because if we don't have that baseline, we're never going to achieve where we want to go. So I find that this is an amazing tool, an amazing thing that we track, and it also gives the ability for other people to look at other hobbies or superpowers that are like them and have conversations. I know we have a Slack channel of all our music lovers based on our hobbies and superpowers. So this is a way that we can connect and bring connectivity to our team that's not focused on those targets, but really the human behind those targets.
I love that. I think especially in now how we are bringing teams on remotely, right? Like for the training purpose, and the fact that we had the experience where teams were, we would be waiting for other people to join, and we heard people be like, oh, but hey, where are you from? Like questions that normally you would have, I don't know, on a coffee chat or maybe waiting for your lunch. So it's great that you have these different fun tools, to help people get to know each other outside of what they are. And then, I think this is a great swift move into this next topic, because on one hand, right, we're trying to bring the humanness and the connection back. And on the other hand, with COVID especially, we really experienced that people were connected 24/7. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but that we're really having a difficult time to disconnect because you didn't have that separation of leaving the office. So how do you find the balance between really allowing people to connect to each other and also helping them set the boundaries that they need to stop working when they need to stop working, because we all need that to be sustainable and successful in our work today. Duncan, I'd love to start with you again, if you want to chat about experiences that maybe you might have seen from your clients or even your organization.
Yeah, I think from we were talking about before is the humanity part, right? It's an understanding that everybody needs to start with trust, and we have to build a connectivity before we get into some of the other details. I think what we see a lot is we have to practice what we preach as leaders. If we're encouraging people to take PTO, we as leaders have to take PTO, harness that environment. If we don't show an environment where mistakes are allowed, how can we expect teams to come to us with their mistakes and use that as a learning experience? The list goes on and on. Things like sending late Slack messages, late emails, working on trying to schedule some of those interactions so they don't feel like they have to be available at all hours of the night. I see this as a really common thing that a lot of leaders in HR, our clients, are working on, as well as our team. We have to practice what we preach. If we don't, then we can't expect our team to feel it's genuine, right? Everybody knows that there's a lot of rhetoric out there and a lot of promotion of overwork. And if we want those boundaries, we really have to show that we are owning those as well.
Yeah, I love that, and I'd love to touch on it from a startup environment. We really experienced a huge growth because of we offer virtual team building for companies, right? And so many companies were looking for that. It was an amazing opportunity. And it was also handling the revenue North America. I totally burnt out this year because nobody knew how long it was going to last, and so that vulnerability piece, being able to share that, it was interesting recently in reviews with colleagues. They mentioned, this was so helpful to hear that you're also somebody that can burn out, and that, when you do that, you share it and that you encourage people not to do that. I think it's so, so important, bringing that vulnerability element. I love that. Swiftly moving over to you, Laura, can you share how you're embodying that mix of, or that balance between setting boundaries and letting people bring their whole selves to work?
Absolutely. And I think Duncan hit the nail on the head. It's got to be leader-led. It has to be something where leaders are really leaning into this. We've had the always on, and we've had to tell them it's okay to say, I can't. It's okay. It's okay to disconnect and, make sure that we're putting our focus on mental health and burnout, and to avoid the burnout, right? We've implemented a few things from a leadership perspective of having a no meeting day. So encouraging our leaders to don't be that leader who schedules a meeting on a no meeting day, really prioritizing, that safe time, making sure people are blocking out their calendars, reducing meeting times that are 30 minutes to 25 minutes so they can get that little space that you said earlier, in terms of we lost the commute time to decompress or to, reflect. We lost the, going from conference room to conference room and, the chit chat. How can you build in some of that time? So we've noticed if we put some guardrails there, employees are so thankful, and really having our leaders lead the way in that way. Oh, we also implemented this me day, which really allows them, everybody takes the day off. So you're not coming back to PTO, a bunch of emails, everybody's off. There's no emails, there's no Slack messages. You can actually take the day for yourself to do whatever you like.
That's amazing. I love that. And yeah, that the small but really precious 5 to 15 minutes between calls makes such a huge difference. Even just to stand up and get a glass of water, it's crazy how we forgot to do these things. Afif, what about you? I know that obviously within your industry, you might have a slightly different angle here, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, but I think it's very much similar to what Duncan and also Laura mentioned. And I think there's 2 points that I would like to make it. And one of them is how we define productivity. The work has changed. The way we work has changed. Even in our industry, there are certain departments or certain sections that we have gone into hybrid models or completely virtual models, and we don't need for example, if you're in the sales department, you don't need a central office in Europe. People can work from home and they can have their appointments. And I think one of the things that we did very well was that at the very early stage of pandemic, we defined the productivity, and we said, well, for us, productivity would be that you get the job done. As long as you do it, it is up to you what time you did. Of course, there are certain meetings that everybody will have to attend, and we, obviously we make sure that we don't send emails at on hours or meetings on an on off day or on a day where it's a public holiday. So I think these kind of things gave a very clear message. But the most important thing, which I believe the HR department can really speak to their senior leadership team and jump into these decisions around how everyone defines productive, because still people are working from home and they think, oh, I have to do 8 hours or 6 hours, 7 hours every day, either in meetings or virtually. I mean, there are some companies, big corporations still around the world where you literally have to sign in every day 4 or 5 times to show that you're actually working from home. Obviously this stress people. So how can we take that off and define that? So we have to adjust those policies. And the second point I would like to make is that, specifically relating to the point around humanity at work, there's nothing that disappoints an employee hearing a decision or getting to know a decision that may have an impact on them, even whether it's positive or negative impact, from a news or from someone else, other than hearing it from your own HR department or from the from the company. There are times where we make decisions that may have a negative impact on an employee, whether it's benefits or pay or job or various things, and they hear sometimes this from newspapers or from a board memo, but not from their human resource department or from their service department. So this is also a very important thing we need to understand, because if you want to build the trust, you have to let them know that this is coming, this is going to happen. So keep people informed, and that transparency is the most important thing to create that trust, which I believe that Duncan connected at the very beginning of this question. So these are the 2 points I would like to highlight.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one thing that I'm really seeing also in common is the importance of having leadership on board, right? Whether it's showing vulnerability or really practicing what they're preaching or what the HR departments are preaching. So do you have any examples, or can you touch on a little bit how it was to get leadership on board? Or, any experiences for somebody in the audience that might be wanting to get their leadership on board, whether it's through collecting as much information from what employees actually want, any kind of thing that you experience that might have been helpful.
Yeah, I have a great example that I would like to share, and I think this tells us what is really important. I've learned this quote from John Maxwell's leadership group, which I'm sure many attending may know. And John Maxwell said at the very beginning of his career, everything rises and falls on leadership. So companies who actually stood up to this challenge of COVID are companies, organizations where they had great leadership. There were companies who actually waited and had this attitude or the mindset saying, we'll wait and see. They're still waiting. So the interesting thing is that in our company, in Lux Resorts and Hotels, from 27th of February, which is when our destinations we felt that the COVID is going to impact and we have to close the properties and the board of this country. So we created a COVID task force team led by the CEO of the company. From 27th of February 2020 up until today, every Tuesday, every Friday, we have actually a COVID task force meeting. And what do we talk in this meeting? It's all about people. It's not about the numbers. It's not about the business value. It's about, okay, what are we doing to bring people back to work? What trainings are we giving them? Who is giving them the coaching guidance? Who is following up on the vaccination? Who is following up on people who are, we even went into details around, if colleagues are coming back to work, if they're vaccinated, we need to make sure that the household, everybody who lives in the house, is also vaccinated. How can we connect with the interagencies within that country or the city, and how can we get that organized? So this approach, and this is coming from the CEO, he's basically challenging everybody to say, well, for example, one may say, well, I don't think we have enough vaccines available in this city. Well, you find a way. You don't have a contact or connect. I remember one particular day, one of our salespersons said, well, we don't have any connection with this airline to bring people. I said, well, who else on this call has a connection? And one person said, well, I know the CEO secretary. I said, well, put me in touch with the secretary. We wrote to the airline, and rest is history. So I think that is the approach we need. And if lead and I mean up until today, and that is, and the discipline of doing that, and the discipline of what we talk has showed almost 57 leaders, senior leaders in our organization, what leadership is. And if we look at how we have come up through this situation, is just incredible. And we're a small boutique hotel company. I mean, I'm sure big companies do probably exactly the same, but I think there's a lot we can study, and good leaders really did stood up for this challenge.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like you have really resourceful teams too. Laura, I'm curious to hear your experience with bringing leadership on board.
I think for us, it was really sitting down and having conversations with the employees. We're also really doing a bottoms-up approach. We did a survey, and the employees told us what they wanted. So really, the top-down, sometimes mandates are not connecting with what the employee experiences. And we realized that our middle management really needs the help to connect and message, right? So from that perspective, really looking at how we can enable the discussions at the team leader level. We are realizing that the discussion is build rituals with your team. That's where the work gets done, at the manager level, frontline level with their employees. What rituals do you need to create to make an inclusive environment where everybody feels welcomed and works differently? That's where the magic is happening. That's where our best teams are coming out, and we're enabling that. So our of course, our leadership is leading the way, but it's also hearing it from the employees. They're really listening, and that's what's really changing the way for us.
Yeah, I love that. I think having that bottoms up approach, and then for the leaders to understand, okay, this is where I need to embody it now, makes so much sense. Duncan, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with Laura completely. It's listening to your people, and it's also encouraging those managers and leaders to interact in maybe a different way than you did previously, really focusing on performance reviews, making sure that they understand where their path is, making sure that you're really getting that information from the ground floor and helping it dictate what you're doing. Because it's true, a lot of organizations that we work with have that disconnect, and they're looking to figure out the best ways to kind of minimize that connect or that gap. And it really starts with listening to your employees and not just doing it through routine, but doing it with intent.
Yeah, intent and rituals, two words that I love. Awesome. So obviously we know that this is going to continue to be a key competitive advantage in this new world of work, whether it's hybrid, whether it's some companies going completely remote. So what do you think is the key to building this culture where shared value and really a true human experience, we talked about compassion and care, are at the core of it all? So what are some of the keys? What are some of the secrets? We talked about some already that we can really share with our audience. Anything that you've seen or anything that you're maybe working on implementing also, to ensure that you're a company that stays, attractive for and competitive for the current base, but also for new talent that's looking for organizations like yours. Laura, do you want to start us off?
Sure, happy to. So, one of the things, so I would say three things: trust, empowerment, and communication. Those are the three things that we've realized is going to make this work. And for us, really taking a step back and saying, okay, at the team level, we've done this work. You know what the work is, the outcomes, the goals we're trying to achieve. How can we get there? Part of that has been the employee first mindset and making sure, but we also have to recognize that we have this thing out there now called the great attrition, right? People have realized that they can work differently. And if we're not going to embrace that and allow them, the flexibility that they built the trust with us. We had some great revenue, built great products during this COVID. Like, we've had really great success. The fact that if we mandate you have to come back to the office, and they're realizing, I'm a software engineer, I've been able to do this. We're not going to be able to be that place that attracts talent anymore. We want to be that place. We have to stay, flexible. We have to ensure that our team leaders are equipped and learn if, different ways of managing different individuals, meeting them where they're at, doing situational leadership, the coaching, all of that is really key for us right now.
Yeah, and that's the second time I hear the coaching aspect of it. That's also something that I'm seeing really a lot of organizations focus a lot more on. That's amazing. And you hit it on the you hit the head on the nail. It's really, if we don't want our companies to be a part of that great resignation that a lot of companies are experiencing, it's really important for us to listen and to have that employee first approach. I'd love to go to you, Duncan. What about whether it's your clients or even internally, what you've seen?
Yeah, I think obviously Laura hit on a lot of the topics. I think that they're spot on. Some other ones that I see is promoting a culture of learning. I think that that's super important for your team. Everybody's on a different path. We can't use one title to encompass that individual. They may be working on their presentation skills or their back-end data skills. Everybody's doing something a little bit different, and not everybody's going to be perfect. So promoting an environment where someone is continuously learning and getting better, and mistakes are seen as opportunities to learn rather than failures, right? I think that that's really important. I think diversity of thought is a really big one. Try to get people that bring different perspectives, different backgrounds, different perspectives, because it actually is extremely important for your team. You don't want something that's going to be exactly the same cookie cutter. Yes, yes, yes. We want someone to challenge. We want someone to think about something different. And that's where your competitive edge comes from. It doesn't come from everybody saying yes. I think that a big one, I like to say it, someone said it to me along the line, I'm sure they got it from somebody else, but culture eats strategy. And what I mean by that is no matter how good your strategy is, if you don't have the right people invested in your mission, bringing something to the table and feeling empowered, it doesn't matter how good that strategy is. Because if you're going to have a stop-start kind of mentality where people aren't buying in, maybe they're succeeding, it's not going to be what you want. So you need to match that strategy with an amazing team culture and really focusing on putting the pieces there that bring that. It's not always about having every top performer, but maybe this person can bring this to the team and really build a culture of working together.
Yes, 100%. And I loved the aspect of a culture of learning. I think that it ties back into some of you mentioned in what humanity at work is also having purpose. And I think that if you're having, if through your purpose you're able to continuously learn about yourself and improve also in terms of the skills that you're utilizing your work in, if we're able to create those cultures for people, then they're going to want to stay and continue to grow. So I love that. How about you, Afif? Some last pieces of
I think my take on this is something related to the values of the company. I believe that all whether it's a small company or a big company, or regardless of the destination or location we operate, but we have great values in the company. A lot of the time, these values are taught on onboarding process, the new hire orientation, and probably it is linked with other learning programs. Now, the problem that we have is that it's nice to have good values, but it has no meaning in it if people don't live by those values. Because you can, for example, I remember a couple of years ago, I visited a hospital where in the reception, they said 10 commandments of our service, and number one was we smile to all our customers. I stayed in the hospital for few hours to get a medical examination, and I never received a single smile from any employee. And then I visited a few years ago to another hospital where they didn't have any of their values posted anywhere, but my first impression was how friendly they were, because the first person I met walking down the aisle was a laboratory technician, because I was asking for a location and she took me personally to their spot rather than saying this over there. So you see the difference, right? Because maybe the laboratory technician probably had understood the values. And one thing that we even do in our organization is, rather than putting values posters and visions everywhere, we encourage people to live, because every employee who works and lives in your organization is basically presenting the behavior of those values. If they aren't doing it, your values and mission has actually no meaning to the end receivers. And if you help your employees to understand the values and discover their values and link them with the company values, that's when they find the purpose at work. And I know we're a little bit getting close to time, but I'd like to share this example. A couple of years ago, there was a research that was done by psychologists at the Yale University where they interviewed hospital cleaners. And it's interesting because they asked a couple of the cleaners, and some of them said, well, this is the worst job in the world. It's very tough. It's hard work, hard labor. But they also asked from a couple of other hospital cleaners and attendants, and they had a completely different response. They thought this was the best job in the world. They believe when they come to work, they actually heal the people who are admitted in the hospital. They believe that they are the people who actually make the life of doctors and nurses much easier. But you see, both of these people, they get paid the same thing end of the day. They're from different parts of the world who works in these hospitals. But this group here on the left hand side, they understood the meaning and the purpose of the work, whereas the other ones are still struggling to find out. So I think, and then also linking with what Duncan said, that that's where the learning culture comes in. Because if you continuously focus on teaching and learning on their areas of interest, eventually they will find out the purpose at work and they will embrace the values.
Yeah, I love that. And I also think that when we're pushing for a culture where you're able to bring your whole self to work, on the days where maybe it's not that you're not embodying the values, but where you're not at your best, right? How are we creating a culture where then people are able to bring also that side of them and being able to go to their leadership or go to their manager and know that that's also okay? One really small tool that I can give that we do before any really important meeting is we use this exercise called the traffic lights, which is basically you're saying if you're red, yellow, or green for anybody that doesn't know this exercise. And it really helps to understand where someone is at. And if somebody is red today because something happened at home, they're not doing so well, then we know that maybe the topic or the conversation or the decision that needed to be made in that meeting isn't a conversation that we should be having, or that they're going to bring, part of themselves that is their true self, but that maybe isn't going to be the best for that decision making in that day. And how can we really accept that too? Because as we know, nobody's perfect. So moving on to some Q&A, we have a couple questions. So I'm going to read this one from Enrique. Thank you, Enrique, for your question. It could be difficult to walk this path into a company that still has great results and can be convinced about its actual organizational culture that doesn't need to be changed. So what could be the script to follow in order to mobilize the company toward a more humanized one? So I think that what we're hearing is you're all three coming from a company that embodies this. So what about if you're currently in a company that doesn't, right? How can you help the company from within see that this is really key and important? I'll open up the floor if anybody wants to take this one.
I'm happy to jump in on this one. I always look at it from, yes, great results is the what, but how? How are they doing it? So when we look at an iceberg, it's there, but what's underneath going through there? So like some employee focus groups, understanding, connecting with the employees and really hearing their experience might be something that the leadership is not aware of. They might be getting those results, but what does the attrition look like? What does the learning look like? Do they even have time to learn and grow? It might be great for a moment, a quarter or two, but have they developed the pipeline? So I think those are just some things that I would kind of take a look at and an angle I would look at and talk to the leadership about.
Yeah, I love that for sure. I want to open up if Duncan or Afif, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah.
No. Sorry.
Sorry, Duncan, you go ahead. Yeah.
No, just a small point. I think that there's always the results are only one piece of the picture. Are you keeping your top talent? Is your top talent leaving? Are you investing a ton of time and efforts into this top talent just to see them leave? There's generally a lot more to that. The results will happen, but there'll be a point where maybe the results aren't going as quickly as you want, so you want to be prepared for that moment. Not everybody's going to go straight up to the moon. Hopefully, that everybody hopes, but there'll be probably some issues or things that you want to cover in between. So you want to be well prepared for anything that's coming at you.
Yeah, and Lisa, I was in the sorry, Magal, my point was that I think also linking with the point Laura mentioned, the culture is the people who works in the company. It has nothing to do with with really the buildings that people go to work. To be honest, I mean, I always give this example, especially in the HR platform. So we always say, well, if you bring this app or this human employee engagement app, is going to work. No, it depends on how well the employees engage in there, because the engagement of the employees and how well they use that app will define and determine how well that fits to the company and the culture. So we have to really look at how we bring the people along with, because the culture is as good as how happy the employees and the organization, or the energy that they bring into. So I think that's the point I would like to add into what Duncan and Laura mentioned.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that there are tools, whether it's what you mentioned or different types of initiatives that can be brought in order to change that, right? But
Yeah.
and then for them to be able to foster that and then continue to have that healthier culture. Well, Enrique, we hope that helps, and we hope that you're going to have some great ears that are going to listen and shift some things. Another question, we would love to hear if you can share with us some of the obstacles that you've run into while aiming to add more humanity to your work and interactions in your organization in a remote setting specifically. I think that I'm sure there's many obstacles we've ran into in COVID. So I'll open up the floor again for this question.
I can take it. I think one that's I see often, especially as a leader, on Zoom, you get the individuals generally best 45 minutes, hour, however often you're interacting, making sure that you're not just relying on that to understand the temperature of your team. I think that that's something that's really, really important to do. When it comes to the organization, you're going to have bumps and bruises, maybe that you're focusing on the humanity and maybe you miss a target. Maybe something isn't going the way you want, but being realistic and doubling down on that, not completely abandoning it. It means that there's more work to do, not that it's not working. It's really important to identify that. Those are two that I would say are really important.
Yeah, I love that. And I can add one in terms of the obstacles, specifically I touched on it already, but in terms of the training and onboarding of people, I think that we try to bring that humanity to it, but it's also really easy to forget when you're focused so much on, first of all, for us, it was completely transitioning the training into a remote culture. And so when you're doing that already, the focus is on, is it going to work and how to create that? And then to think about the humanity, we really saw it when we saw these like questions that people were asking each other of like, actually, wow, they really don't know each other in that way. And so creating things like coffee chats and prompt questions on a weekly basis that you can answer, or as you mentioned, the Slack channel for music and hobbies. I think these are all great ways to really do that. I think that my connection is maybe having issues. I'm hoping that it's going okay. Any last thoughts on that question? Afif, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think one of the challenge that is a very good question. One of the challenge that we have experienced, and I think we have also seen a lot of writings around that recently, is that when we try to bring change or when we try to adapt the new ways of working, not everybody will think the same way you are thinking. So being a HR department doesn't mean you have all the answers. In fact, you don't actually. I always believe that I have a job because of people. That's why I'm in human resources. And so people may not think the same way you think. Therefore you have to find a way to bring them along. And I recently read a wonderful book by Adam Grant called Think Again, which I know is a popular book. This book is all about, how do you help other people to think through things without manipulating them, and with making also by appreciating their way of thinking. And I would recommend everyone to read that book, because I think that book brings an answer to, and I read that book at the beginning of this pandemic, and I use a lot of my learning from that book in a lot of our senior leadership teachings and activities and discussions. Even in on where there somebody would disagree with me, I would actually appreciate disagreement, but I would bring a concept from the book and help them to rethink. And eventually, we all get on board and we get the job done. So I think that the idea of helping other people to rethink what they're thinking is probably one of the ways that we can get through those challenges.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you all so much. We're wrapping up now. I mean, I feel so grateful that there is a space where we can talk about things like compassion and care, community, purpose, having an employee first mindset, promoting a culture of learning. This is really, really the future. So thank you, all of you, for championing this, for bringing the humanness back at work. We need a lot more of it. And I hope to see you soon in other rooms in the conference, maybe in the chat. Thanks again.